Hey guys, welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Nerdarchist Ted, and today I'm joined by special guests Scott Garibay and Nate the Nerdarch. Um, so we're going to do a live chat about character creation in the Star Wars RPG system. We did a video on our character concepts and whatnot, and as we've dived into the books, there's a couple things that I've kind of hit as a stumbling block, as well as based on some of the things that Scott had mentioned during that video that I really was like, well, I need to get the DM on the line. So,
I hear you.
so Scott, I looked at the character breakdown. For those of you who didn't watch the other video, I'm going to be playing a Togruta as my race. I'm going to be playing my primary class is going to be a bounty hunter gadgeteer, and I've added the second specialization of a is it force enlightened, force sensitive, emergent, something along those lines. Scott, you want to correct me?
Absolutely. It is from the Age of Rebellion book, and it is, yeah. So it's from, it is from Age of Rebellion, and it is the Force-sensitive Emergent. And what it is so basically in Star Wars you have a race, and then you also have a career, and you have specializations. You can only have one career, but you can have as many specializations as you can afford. And so what Force-sensitive Emergent is, it is a universal specialization. And so essentially you can become a bounty hunter and then be Force-sensitive Emergent. So Force-sensitive Emergent is a great tool for any character who wants to play a career, but then have a hook into using Force powers. And there's a lot of precedents for this in Star Wars. One of the really simple ones is the way to think about it is Princess Leia and I'm using Princess Leia from how she was referred in episodes 4, 5, and 6. So she was a diplomat, and that was her career. So her race was human. Her career was a diplomat, and then she was Force-sensitive Emergent as well. So she had a diplomat as her career. She had specializations there, and then in addition to that, she had Force-sensitive Emergent specialization. So it is a second specialization.
So now, if I go through everything, you had said in the video that you were potentially going to consider us starting with a higher point value of working with.
Yeah.
Now, if I look at Togruta, they get 100 XP to build, quote unquote, their character. Now, Togruta gets essentially one die or one level in perception. Bounty Hunter gives you 4. Gadgeteer gives you a choice of 2 others from the list. Now, it says when you take on a second specialization, you don't get any skills. Now, if you look at the Force-sensitive Emergent, they don't get skills, but they get Force +1 or something along those lines.
Right.
So is that something that I don't get, or because it's technically not listed as a skill, I would get it?
Oh, you would get that. Yeah.
Okay. So I do get the Force +1, which technically, once I decide I want to buy off of the Force power tree, I have that technically unlocked. Is that the way that works?
Correct.
So now my next question is: you have so many things to areas to purchase. You have your stats or abilities, I believe they're called.
Correct.
Your brawn agility. You have your skills that you get the ones for free essentially at level 1. They can only be bought up to level 2. And then you have are they talents off of the character trees?
Correct. And you have to buy them. And do you understand how they have you have to buy them as they connect?
You have to follow the tree. So if you buy the first one, that takes you to the second one. But if it veers off to the left or right, you can go that direction without buying the thing that's technically above it. Correct. All right. That's what I thought.
So here's where we want to go. So one of the things is you're going to be getting Force-sensitive Emergent. That is going to cost you 20 XP. And the reason why is all your specializations are your cost is 10 times per the total number of specializations you have with the purchase if it's in your career field, plus 10. So that's going to be 20 XP for that. And what
I had read it as it would be 30 because I'm buying the second specialization plus 10.
I thought it was 30 as well.
The second specialization plus
because it's not in your main thing, because it's not one of your specializations. That's why I thought it was
like
30.
Like if I decided I was going to go assassin as a second, that would cost me 20. But because it's not within the field, that
right.
I think.
Here's why I thought it was 20. The reason why is force sensitive. For one, just be really aware. Force sensitive emergent is a very specialization. It's a very special specialization. It's not like a lot of other ones, and it is a universal specialization. It was specifically designed so it really can be attached to any career.
Okay, that's fine. So
great, that's good news.
I'll mark that down as 20 as opposed to 30. You know, in a system where things can cost 5 and 10 points, saving 10 points lets you really get more bang for your buck.
Yeah.
So when it actually comes down to spending points, like what should really be my focus? I believe your stats or your abilities you can only buy up to 3. Your skills you can only buy up to 2, and then your talents are literally just whatever you feel like grabbing from the tree.
So one of the things, so I'm going to answer that question, but I also wanted to get this out there before. So at this point, you are going to have 200 points total. Okay. So that's your total, and I believe that that's going to be enough to kind of tell the stories that we've been wanting to create the characters that we've been wanting to create.
Okay, that makes a huge difference because I didn't actually go into the force tree at all. I was so perplexed by you don't get anything from the second specialization that I was reading the force sensitive emergent area, trying to find out what skills do I not get. That Nate's like, it says right here force power +1, and I'm like, oh, well now I don't know if I get that at all. So I'm like, I'm now even more confused.
Yeah, absolutely.
But,
and you guys know me. Like if it's a question on if you get it or not. Generally, I'm a say yes kind of GM. You know what I mean? So generally, if you're really on the line, feel free to shoot me a text, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But generally, you're more than welcome to go down those lines, and and I'll take a look. And really, we don't really have a lot of power gamers here, in my opinion.
Right.
I don't really feel like that that threatened. I don't even really feel threatened by power gamers. But so the real issue is just go right ahead, and so yes, you absolutely do get the force 1.
Okay.
You do have 200 points, and
so are you essentially giving everyone 100 points to play with? Because
exactly.
Nate, I believe the Zabrak get 90, and Dave's character, the droids, they start off with stats all in ones, but they get 175 XP. So
well,
for him.
Yeah, and so actually, I am giving a flat 200. Right. So I'm sorry. Let me put it this way. I'm giving whatever your race doesn't get, give you 200. Right. Yeah. So you definitely want to keep that in mind. So if there's a cheaper race, you're going to get more points out of it.
Okay? Oh, okay. Yeah. So Dave's going to wind up with an extra 25. Nate's going to wind up with an extra 110. I get an extra 100.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really weird. But okay.
The other thing I wanted to bring out real quick is one of the things that I think is really interesting. So one, I'm sorry. Let me answer your question. So do you use it on skills and talents? Do you use it on jumping up your attributes? Do you use it on the talents? My take is talents. I think you want to get as broad as you can, and the talents are extremely useful. And I feel like you get a much more interesting character than if you were to bump up specific attributes.
That was exactly where I went. I wrote down what my stats were. I chose my 4 free skills from Bounty Hunter, my 2 free skills from Gadgeteer, and then I literally said, "Oh, I got 100 XP," and I spent it all on the 2 trees.
Yeah.
Now, when you play D&D and you say, okay, well, I'm going to play a barbarian monk. They both get unarmored defense, and they don't stack. Well, how does that work in this? Particularly under Gadgeteer and under Force Sensitive Emergent, there is the toughened power, which adds +2 to your wound threshold.
Right.
If I take it under both, do I have the ability to have a +4 to my wound threshold? Or if I take it once, do I automatically have it wherever else it appears?
No, they're cumulative, so you would have
Okay.
a +4.
All right. So I've definitely chosen that path. I've got, like I said, I've got 100 XP of talents picked out. So I literally, once you've taken the 20 points for the second specialization, I have 80 points to play with. I'll probably up a couple skills and then possibly grab, a handful of, a talent or two more. The fact that I've got everything but brawn is a 2 or higher, and my cunning is a 3, which really fits for the bounty hunter esque style. I really don't feel any real desire to charge those up.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the other races look like. Like I said, I jumped right into the one that I was picking. The other thing is I was looking through the backgrounds. So I'm looking at upper middle class or lower upper class as my background, just so that I have a background of coming from wealth. So
Yep.
anytime I'm in a poverty situation, it's really going to be frustrating for me. And it's something I'm going to be struggling with. I don't fully understand the obligation layout or chart.
Yeah, so let's talk about it. So one, you want to understand what your obligation score is, okay? That's not too hard to get. Let me know if you have any trouble determining what your obligation score is. But one of the things that's really interesting is it's a mechanic within the game where and there's actually 3 of them. There's obligation, there's duty, and then there's morality. So obligation, because you're creating a career from Edge of the Empire, is what you owe, and this really comes, purely straight out of Han Solo not owning the Millennium Falcon and being obliged to Jabba the Hutt. So basically, you're going to have an obligation, and then story-wise, you need to connect that to who you owe and what you owe them for. Okay, so you might be a wanted man, you might have an obligation to someone who saved your life in a combat situation, all those kind of things, right?
I was leaning heavily towards the debt, basically someone that kind of took me in when I was at my worst and essentially gave me my startup to be able to get the gear, because I look at how much things cost in the actual system, and it's like, oh, you get 500 credits, and I'm like, I don't see this guy walking around in just heavy clothing as armor. Like, I really wanted him in like patchwork armor, like maybe like a shoulder plate from Mandalorian armor, maybe a thing from a stormtrooper armor, maybe something from somewhere else. So like, it's clearly hodgepodge, and that's actually the feel that I want. This guy isn't this is a full suit of something or other. I've kind of got a persona that I'm working on for like who his bounty hunter quote unquote name would be. I'll get more into that later. But it's like, I don't know how bad the obligation system is. It's like, oh, well, if you take this level of +2 2,500 credits, like, how much is that gonna kill the campaign if I take that once or twice?
Ted, 2 words: carbonite freezing. How bad was it for Han Solo?
Well, that was him going off on a business trip, and he was gonna miss a couple sessions. That's all that was.
Oh, okay. All right. I see.
Let's get into that. So to me, I will tell you right now, the only career that, in my opinion, logically has resources generally is going to be diplomat, right?
Okay.
Maybe spy, okay? But it is my opinion. So I'm just giving you kind of a Scott Garibay warning, in that I'm the game master for the game. And resources,
Dun, dun.
yeah, resources flow so ridiculously easy in my game that I think it's unwise to use a lot of points to get them in the beginning. And the only reason why is, in my games, basically, you're going to be going here and there, and when adventures start happening, I was amazed how quickly this happens in most Star Wars games. But you can be on one ship going toward a planet, and now you're on another ship. Oh, and there was combat, and the captain of that ship died. Now who owns that ship? And you go to the next port. And I've had campaigns where it's very common for very poor characters to have 150,000 credits very quickly. Okay. The reason why is ships are very commonly accessible. And so ships really change the kind of credit mechanic. In fact, in my opinion, within Star Wars, it's one of the reasons why I love this role-playing game so much, credits really mean very little. It's who you know, what you owe them, what they owe you. Force powers are incredibly important, and so being able to bring a force-sensitive or a full force user to the table for virtually any task is a huge amount of credit. So I really would not put many of your points into getting credits, because once a game gets rolling, there's so many, there's Sabacc games left and right. There's so many credits on the board that really, it's not really a game where you're saying, oh, well, I have 15,000 credits. It's more like, oh, my hyperdrive just broke and I need 50,000 credits. Not how am I going to scrape that credit up, but how am I going to get this done? Where can I find the next starport? Who do I know there? It's, so it's much more barter than credit based.
Okay, I just curious because when I actually looked at the thing, it's like, all right, 500 credits. All right, I'm buying heavy clothing and like a single pistol.
Yep.
And I have to go from there because like one of my gadgeteer abilities that I've picked was Armor Master, which basically allows me to increase the I think the soak value of my armor. And I'm like, okay, well, in order for that to be happening, I need to be wearing armor, and the cheapest armor is just heavy clothing. And I don't know what the the descriptor is on that, but I'm like, all right, well, heavy clothing just sounds like I'm just wearing stuff that can possibly absorb a little shock. It doesn't look like armor.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So when I actually did a breakdown of, okay, well, laminate armor is 5,000, a lightsaber is 10,000, a handful of different guns or a couple hundred to a couple thousand, like I could be like, all right, give me 20K and I'm set to make the character that I want. So like it's very daunting to say like, all right, what I would consider what this character is in my mind versus what I can actually get. It was so far different that I'm like, all right, let me at least broach the subject and see what you have to say on the matter, because it's like I don't want to make a bad decision. I don't want to be like, oh yes, I've got 40 points in obligations so that I can afford this 10 grand to get armor and weapons. And,
lightsaber.
Lightsaber's on the wish list, but it's not a necessity.
Necessity.
So it's like, because technically, if I trained as a youngling, I would know how to use a lightsaber. It just for some reason when they kicked me out, they didn't let me keep mine. Whatever. So I just wanted to make sure that I'm making proper decisions for character creation, because it's so different than making a character in D&D. You can't say, oh, well, I'm going to do this so that I can up my stats or start off with a quote-unquote magic item or whatever have you. So it's like, all right, I wanted to know.
Well, and one other thing I think is really interesting, too, is you have these points where you're, and I feel like the game is really fascinating because you have these points when you start, and you're saying, okay, I'm going to take this specialization, I'm going to take this specialization. Once you get rolling, one of the things I found is my players keep getting specializations for free, and they do it through the story. So I had specifically it was a Sentinel Shadow. So we had a Sentinel Shadow. Oh no, I'm sorry. It was a Seeker Hunter. So it was a Jedi Seeker Hunter in our game, and she actually got a position which was fairly high in the Jedi Council, and started in kind of in a leadership role. And she was constantly dealing with politics, and she was constantly dealing with a lot of questions from the Jedi Council. And and she came to me and in front of and actually did it in character and said, that's it. Heavy wears the crown. I'm out, right? And I'm actually, giving up my position on the Jedi Council, and I'm actually giving up my position as a Jedi. I'm walking away from this, and I'm actually becoming a smuggler, right? So this would have been her. This would have been 30 points. And that's a lot of XP. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And, but because she did it in a story way, she got that specialization for free. And I was like, okay, you're now a smuggler. Here's your new contact, and you get to choose one talent off of the tree for free to kind of launch into that new specialization. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that's really interesting is once the game gets rolling, your character can kind of go into new specializations without having to pay that full XP cost, which is really fascinating. It's a really interesting aspect of the game. Go ahead.
Is that a character?
No, I think that's Star Wars because, again, if you look at like Leia, she was a diplomat. That is her career, and specifically her. So she was a diplomat with an ambassador specialization, and then she got Force sensitive emergent, in the third film. The other thing, and it's exactly the same with Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker is, he's a pilot, and then he becomes a full Jedi. And those are story driven, and so I really like to see characters changing in the way the movies had them change. Great. Here's another one. So every single major Star Wars character actually comes into one of these transitions where they get a new specialization. So Han Solo, he is a smuggler, right? And specifically with a scoundrel specialization. He then gets commander, squad leader in Return of the Jedi, and then I think we're going to see him as a Commodore in the next one. You know what I mean? And these are really, and he did not intend to go there. It happened with his character, which is really fascinating. So so one of the things I think is, it's really, my point is, you have two ways of getting something done when you start rolling. You can start saving up points and say, oh, I'm going to take Guardian Peacekeeper, right? Or you can say, or you can say in the game, I'm going to Coruscant and I'm going to talk to the leader of the Jedi Council. You could end up getting yourself 30 points worth of specialization for nothing by helping me drive the story. You know what I mean?
Right,
so I think that's kind of interesting.
All right. So the skill selection that I have. We got a double thing going on.
Oh, anything on my side?
Yeah, you got some hiccup.
Oh, sure. Hold on. Is this any better?
All right. I'm talking. There we go. No double here. I have the skills I selected under Bounty Hunter were Vigilance, Brawl, Ranged Heavy, and Streetwise. And under Gadgeteer, I took Ranged Light and Mechanics. Is there anything that I'm lacking, or is that a good selection? As again, I get Perception from Togruta for free.
So let's dig into it. So tell me your career again.
Gadgeteer under Bounty Hunter.
All right. Yeah. Okay. And Gadgeteer under Bounty. Okay. Great. So I got Bounty Hunter and Gadgeteer. And so what was your first talent?
No, not the talents. The skill selection.
Sure. I got you. Yeah, I see it right at the top.
I took Vigilance, Brawl, Ranged Heavy, and Streetwise. And then on their gadgeteer, I chose ranged light and mechanics.
Right. I was concerned. Yeah, that sounds like a solid Brock. I'm looking now. It sounds like you did not take Did you take perception?
I get perception as a Togruta.
Okay. Oh, that's good.
So I have one in each of those 7.
Oh, here's a big one. What did you take piloting space?
I did not.
That's good
because I won't be starting off with a ship.
Right.
So therefore, I felt there was no need for me to go that route.
Right. And I think Nate, basically, it kind of makes sense that your character would be starting with a ship. Were you envisioning that, or did you have something different in mind?
Well, I'm an with the character background, I'm an explorer from a distant Zabrak colony. So I figured I had to get here someplace, so I either got dropped, I could have traveled with somebody to a spaceport, been given some credits, and then said, hey, go collect information, and then when you get a chance, upload it to the hub.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, I could go and not start with a ship, and I would be cool with that if that would be better for the story.
So, actually, the group needs one ship, but they definitely don't need 2, and they don't need a lot of people with piloting space. One thing that's also really exciting that I really like within the Star Wars universe is how when you get into ship combat, there's a lot of things for people to do when you're in ship combat. So one thing you want to do, Ted, is think about what your character will do when you're in combat. So look, you have ranged heavy,
yes.
So you can actually do the gunnery. The comms is another specific thing that you can do.
I was looking at in a space battle, I could either operate the guns or be the person putting out fires because of my mechanics skill.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know how, whether mechanics covers everything from the small gadgets and the stuff that you do to your own equipment, all the way up to full-on spaceships. Or whether there are 2 separate skills for that.
I'm sorry. I was actually trying to look up all the things to do with. I'm sorry. Repeat that question.
So I wasn't certain whether the skill mechanics covers everything from the hey, I'm going to modify this gun in my armor, all the way up to I can fix spaceships.
Yeah, it pretty much does. It allows you to work on both. Hold on, I'm pulling up the full skill list right now. Yeah, it looks like it is not. There's nothing different that you would need in order to fix spaceships, which is great because it makes mechanics really useful.
Right.
You have piloting, and piloting actually splits into a lot. There's piloting planetary, piloting space, piloting heavy. So that's three different cuts there. So yeah, I think the skills that you got are a good mix. I don't think you're missing anything there.
Okay.
And there was that one thing I wanted to just tell you about, which is when you get going with the spaceships. Yeah, here's the different ones. So and this is really interesting. So when you get into Starship combat, using the shields is one. Co-piloting is another skill. Firing the guns is a specific skill. Jamming, so controlling communications is a really big one. Repair, so you can actually be repairing the ship while you're in combat, which is a big deal because a lot of times you'll take damage and you can get rid of disadvantages right away, which is like a really plotting the course is another one. Scanning for enemies and slicing. Are you guys familiar with slicing?
I am not.
Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead, Nate.
Well, basically, slicing is getting in, it's like computer hack, isn't it?
Exactly. Slicing is the term they use in the Star Wars world for computer hacking, which is great because you really computers were not a big part of Star Wars episodes 4, 5, and 6, and so it was really fascinating because we understand the power of technology now, and so they really wanted to put it into the game, and so they're called slicers. So in Star Wars world, they're called slicers. And then the last one, go ahead.
I love when a system takes something and makes it their own by giving it its own slang and
special name.
lingo.
Yeah, it is really
Um,
cool. And it's spoofing. Spoofing the missiles is the last one. So it's really great that you brought that forward to skill list. And it sounds like you do have a good mix. The only thing that I have seen teams do is sometimes you'll get 3 or 4 really good pilots, and you're kind of like, this really didn't. And it can be challenging to keep that useful in the game. So I would really steer people away from piloting. Nathan, I think that is logically something that you're going to be able to do. And also, Nathan, I think that generally you will probably come out with ownership of a ship if nobody else takes that ownership. Yeah.
Okay, so what you're saying is if it makes sense for no one else to have a ship, then I'll be the one that has the ship?
I definitely think that's the way to go. And let's think it through. So, Nathan, I'm sorry. So Ted's character, no. The Jedi Wookiee is definitely not going to have a ship. And then who else do we? The droid logically makes sense that the droid would have a ship. And then I think that's the full spread. So I think generally, yeah.
We have one other person who has so far done no concept work on a character yet. So he's currently out of town traveling.
Yeah. So that's Bart, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And so you're right. Now I kind of wanted to leave it open. So if he goes smuggler, the ship's probably going to come from him. But I think there's a logical link for Nathan to have a ship. And right. So and I will just say, honestly, my opinion, the Millennium Falcon is a character in the Star Wars role-playing game, in the Star Wars films, and I very much try to make it the same in my games, where the ship is really a part of the story, and really kind of gets a lot of character elements, which is kind of neat.
Yeah, I agree. You go one step further when you've got a ship like the Millennium Falcon, or if you want to step out of the Star Wars universe and talk about Serenity. Firefly really did a great job about making the ship be something.
Yeah.
To any GM that wants to step up into making the character be something, that definitely watch those 13 episodes.
Yeah, I highly recommend Firefly as well for a whole lot of reasons. I agree. It has a lot of Star Wars elements. It kind of has that dirty space motif, a lot very different than Star Trek. It's really quite excellent. So I definitely think we'll probably end up with Nathan, kind of the ship-bound person.
It's going to be hard to get my lightsaber then.
Well, I don't think you're going to be buying your ship. I just think that the story element is going to be like, okay, Nate, you have a ship, right, Scott?
I think especially if I actually do generally. Well, you know what? Actually, it might not be a problem if you guys don't start with a ship. Nathan, if you really want to go, if you'd rather have resources spent on a lightsaber than a ship, definitely go down that road. And one of the things that's interesting is it kind of could be the salad days for that group, where you are kind of at people's mercy to get around, and that actually makes story elements very easy for me, which is good.
Yeah, I was thinking about this. I had the special martial style I was considering for the Zabraks, because you being force sensitive and having a lot of Jedi level people in that colony. Yeah. Since it was a generational ship, I would think that swinging basically like the Roman style gladius, rather than like the short sword, rather than the I was also thinking about some kind of, I don't know if there's like the electro staves that can block lightsabers.
Yep.
So I was thinking about some kind of like gauntleted buckler thing on the other arm that would be kind of so I think because I'm trying to develop a unique culture for the Zabraks, the far-flung Zabraks, and I was thinking a cool way of fighting in a ship that's really tight spaces would be a smaller weapon that's still extremely powerful, and an ability to knock it also stabbed in the face like buckler and short sword kind of feel to it.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Now you're actually saying that what you have on your arm would be able to block a lightsaber, right?
If it's possible for I was thinking electro staves, and
Yep.
I was like, well, is there something that a lightsaber actually can't cut through, like some kind of weird metal or?
Well, and that's one thing that where we're already being helped by the content that actually is out for Episode 7. They actually show a stormtrooper blocking a lightsaber, which is amazing. It's like it's a huge progression. And so, all the Star Wars fans out there, if you watch the Star Wars trailers that are out there, Finn is the specific character, and he's the stormtrooper who joins the rebellion. And Finn actually takes a full-on swing at a stormtrooper, and he blocks it with a powered stave. And so you absolutely could have kind of a bar along there, and that could really be fascinating because that kind of fighting style, no other Jedi would have had that previously, which could be really interesting.
And the Zabraks, the Zabraks from this area developed the double staff fighting style, right? That's kind of like their thing, their martial style.
Yeah, that's a really neat. I think that's a great direction to go down. Definitely.
Okay, so I was thinking, since I'm going to head towards, I'm not a Jedi yet, but I'm heading in that direction.
Yeah.
With the Force Emergent, that I wanted to. I don't know if you can have it as a Force Emergent, have a lightsaber, but that's like what I want to go to. So if it was possible to not, like, maybe I don't start with a lightsaber, but I start with that arm thing.
Yeah, and actually, it's a good point. I'm not actually sure. I am coming up short here on my rules knowledge. That is something I'll need to look up. Is how you start with what are the rules around starting with a lightsaber if you're not a Jedi? And I'm not sure it's actually clearly covered. So let me do a little bit of research. Oh, go ahead.
They have an equipment cost. It's 10. It's 10. It's They have rarity value 6, 10,000 credits.
6 is the highest, though, isn't it?
I believe so.
Yeah, and so that but generally you don't get that kind of equipment right out of the gate. Yeah, definitely. But to tell the truth, and one thing I appreciate, that you guys are already starting to kind of go down the same road as me, Nathan, and I completely agree with you. A lightsaber is worth a ship. They're like that small piece of equipment is the same as owning a ship.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, well, I can't be the one that owns the ship and who's going to be getting a lightsaber.
That's a lightsaber. I totally agree with that. So yeah,
we know that Dave's going to want one. We know that you want one. We know that I want one. We know that if Dave is playing a Jedi Wookiee, he wants one. So it's apparently a lightsaber heavy value party.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
right out of the gate, though. Just so you're aware, that is one thing that's really nice about the Force of Destiny book. If you start as a Jedi, you get a lightsaber done. Like, it's not even, it's right there on your equipment. So, right. And that's really nice, which is excellent. So
speaking of lightsabers and the fact that I technically went through the training process, and I will go into my my Star Wars knowledge, using the references of the Clone War animated show. Like there was one apprentice, and I think it might have actually been Shaak Ti and her apprentice. They actually go to the crystal mine and harvest the crystal, and typically you are building your own lightsaber. So I would know how to make one, and I have training in mechanics, and it's probably my first go-to of skill to up to 2 when I actually look at point cost with this extra 80 that I have to play with. So technically, if I get my hands on a crystal, would I be able to make my own?
Heck to the no, and here's why.
Okay.
So actually, yeah. So it's a little bit of a let's dig into it. So one, I'm not sure. So Shaak Ti, I think you're talking about Maris Brood. Is that right? Her apprentice.
I don't know what her apprentice name is offhand. I'm just recalling an episode of the Clone Wars animated series where they go to the mine because she's going to make her own lightsaber, and she has to harvest the crystal that she feels is going to best suit her.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. So one, that's another big thing. So lightsabers are a big deal in the game. Ships are a big deal in the game, and lightsaber crystals are actually more valuable than lightsabers themselves. And the reason why is and one of the great things about the Force and Destiny book is it actually goes into the crystals and what they do. Some of them are exceptionally powerful. And so one of the things that's really interesting is, so basically you can bring together, so one, they're extremely well crafted from a mechanical perspective. So you could absolutely do that work. Getting the crystal is challenging, right? And so generally one of the things is when she went to get that crystal, there was a Jedi Knight, right? If not a Jedi, I'm not sure. I think Shakti may actually have been a Jedi Master at that point.
Yes, she was.
Yeah, so there, that's really important too to remember is you have Padawan, so you have Youngling, Padawan, Knight, Master, and those are the story roles. Now there's actually Force ratings within the book, which really kind of dig into it. And so, so there was a Jedi Master there to get that. And so one of the things is to know where they are, to go there safely, to actually get those crystals and bring them off planet. That required 2 Jedi to do that, right?
In no way, shape, or form was I trying to say, can I go to that mysterious planet and get a crystal there?
Yeah,
That was never in my wildest ideas. Thinking it would be a possibility. I was just thinking if for some reason, like, there's a destroyed lightsaber or, some kind of, smuggler or whatever have you has a crystal. If I were to acquire a crystal from somewhere, would I be able to actually assemble a lightsaber?
Yeah,
that's what I was getting at.
It's a good. So that's a great point, right? So yes, you could definitely cobble one together, but you probably would not want to. And well, you would have to choose. You would have to choose, right? So there's 2 ways to do it. One, we all saw. So we saw Ben Kenobi give Luke Skywalker his lightsaber, and it seems like oh, this is just some simple thing. You get a lightsaber when an old man hands you one, right? But then we realize, Ben Kenobi is one telling him the biggest lie that was ever told in Star Wars, deceiving him to a huge level, right? And then also he's saying, oh, hey, I'm giving you this piece of equipment, right? Which is great, but now within the next day your parents will be dead, and then we're gonna leave this planet, and you're gonna have to sell and give up every single thing you own, right? And then in addition to that, your entire life will be changed forevermore, right. And that's really what's going to take. So let's say you were to get get a crystal or a damaged lightsaber. So generally, the way it's been working in my games is when you get a lightsaber, it's kind of a big deal in that the way most Jedis do it, especially at the Jedi Knight level, right? When you become especially if you're moving toward being a Jedi Knight who is really a Jedi Knight, period, right? If you're moving toward being a Jedi Knight, rather than saying, okay, I take this lightsaber and I use it, you would gather the crystal, you would then create the mechanical parts yourself, or you can actually outsource that, right? So the part where you actually get all the parts for the lightsaber, that can be done by someone else, right? But here's the big one, right? Generally, when a lightsaber is put together, you are then centered in the Force. The parts are put in front of you, and using the Force, you don't actually assemble a lightsaber by using the screws and all those kind of things. Jedi Knights will actually assemble their lightsaber with the Force, and then and then all those parts will come together. And when they reach out to take that floating object, which they've assembled themselves using the Force, they're then bound with that weapon. And there's even game mechanics within my games that actually say, not only did you get this lightsaber, but you used the Force to assemble it, and it's now an extension of you. You know what I mean? And so that's really kind of interesting. So if you found one, you could go down around and say, great, near, I'm using it now. Or you could say, okay, I have this crystal. I'm gonna create these myself, and then I'm going to try to assemble my lightsaber. And one of the great things that I've already seen done in the campaign was I've seen a Jedi try and fail 3 times to do that. So she had all the parts for her lightsaber, had her crystal, and was not able to use it for a month in game, which was like really challenging, but it pushed that character. And so it can be really interesting story mechanic to actually get to the point where you have your lightsaber and you're fully using it.
Well, that's something that that spurs a couple different thought patterns within within like my character concept, because he failed as a Jedi, and we still have to have some kind of chat and figure out exactly like
What happened?
what happened, what precisely caused him to fail, and I haven't figured out any of that yet. But I know I wanted it to be like end stage, so that he's spent all this time doing all of this stuff, and then when it comes time to be like, okay, is he going to be a Jedi? And they say no. Like, I was an apprentice, a Padawan for what is it, a decade, that they can go down this road, and he takes his trials and fails.
It's a great thing. So one, I mean, we can definitely dig into it. So one of the things I think, it is a great character concept. One of the things I think is really interesting is, of course, the Dagobah tree, right? So Yoda sends Luke Skywalker into the tree to face his fears, and he says, "Don't take your weapons," right? Mm-hmm. And then Luke goes into the tree, and honestly, in many ways, we see Luke come out of. He becomes a Jedi. We don't actually see him become a Jedi. We see him fail at becoming a Jedi, leaving his training early, and then we also see him. Then we see him really as a Jedi with a lightsaber at the beginning of the Return of the Jedi, right? And so I really feel like that your failure absolutely could have come at that moment, where your Jedi Knight teacher told you as a Padawan, okay, you need to go into this kind of mystical situation, and there, when you looked into yourself and said, am I ready to give up love the way Anakin did, or was supposed to, right? Am I ready to give up any rights to revenge for when I'm wronged? When am I ready? Am I really balanced enough to control the Force? And I don't believe, and I believe that when I'm tempted to use the dark side, I won't use it too quickly or too often. And then you looked into yourself and said, "Oh my goodness, I'm not ready to take any position as a Jedi." And so so that mystical point, so I think that is the time where the failure should have come, right? Same point at which Luke had. And so one of the things I would think right out of the gate is I would look at the planets, right? And so in the books you have the planets listed, and they're really wonderful, like Ryloth and Tatooine, and then go look just a couple more. Fondor and Kessel. If you just look at these and see what happened on there, see if that triggers, hey, I think this might have happened at this point. You know what I mean? And go ahead and see what where you think that failure might have happened. Also, if you're like, I don't really have a strong idea, let me know, because I, me, I'll fill that blank in and
right.
So.
Well, I don't want to do the Anakin Skywalker with love. I like, there's nothing really that sparks this character about revenge. So Luke's whole thing, like, both of those are things that have been done. So I'd like to go down a different road. So like, possibly the just my center is off. I'm not balanced. That might be a thing to investigate further and see if that's where I want to go.
Yeah. I would also propose this. So one of the things I think is, one, I can't tell you how excited I am to run this, because and I think you guys are going to see this too as we start to get into it. We all love Dungeons and Dragons so much because it's so deep and there's so much lore there. And really, I really propose that the Star Wars role-playing game is very, very deep, maybe even equally deep to Dungeons and Dragons, because there's been so much content built for it. And so one of the things that's really exciting is when you start talking about the Jedi, and anybody who's Force sensitive emergent, and anybody who has started to go down the road of using Force powers, you can see into the future and you can see into the past, right? And so one of the things I would propose to you is your character saw into the past or into the future and saw an event that really frightened him. And so he said, "Oh my goodness, if this happens and I become a Jedi, this will happen, and I don't want that to happen." Or from the past, you say, "Oh my goodness, I have this secret knowledge of some event that just occurred, and I'm not sure how to process it." Right? So that's another road.
The future sight is pretty cool, and like the Force doesn't always show you what you want to see. It doesn't always show you like it could potentially show you possible things. So like it's very likely that I could have saw an image and I just assumed that, well, if I become a Jedi, this will happen, as opposed to this is an event from my future.
Yeah.
So it could be something where like I chose not to go down this path because I was afraid of this event where I would be forced to handle a situation or be, stuck in a situation. But like you and we could work this out, and it could be like, oh well, you're gonna encounter it anyway.
Yeah.
and then maybe that's something that takes me off the bounty hunter road and possibly going back towards full Jedi.
Yeah. Definitely. The other thing I will throw out there is.
We got a Dave.
Hey, David, how you doing?
What's up, Scott?
Hey, good to see you. So actually, we've really been kind of going full steam here. Have some great ideas for Ted's character. Ted, I think we were able to kind of answer some of your questions as far as where you're at, as far as points and how to spend that content, how to spend your points.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really helpful. And we started talking a little bit about story concepts. He is playing a failed Jedi, and we just kind of talked a little bit about the source of that and where the source of that failure could be coming from. So just a couple things, David, to catch you up. We are going.
I've actually been watching and listening.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, that's great. So you have a 200-point base, and then we had been talking about ships and spaceships and what people do on the spaceships, those kind of things. So, but I think it's been coming along pretty well. So, yeah.
Have you done work on your droid beyond looking at the base stats, Dave?
I have not. The only thing I looked at is I'm looking at probably Bounty Hunter Assassin. I think that's going to be the skill set. I think it's the only thing that's going to give the skill set that that I'm looking for.
Yeah, I think that should be very interesting. Now, one of the things I have some plans for your character from a story perspective. I definitely want him to be older. Maybe like I was thinking about 150 years old. Does that cause you any issues? And also, go ahead.
Actually, see, I was intrigued when we had our discussion before. I was intrigued when Nate started talking about the first Sith War.
You're not saying anything, Dave.
A little bit there, Dave.
I'm sure he's saying awesome things.
Sure he is. Exactly. That's okay.
We lost his mic.
Oh, no.
There we go. We got you.
Go right ahead, David.
All right. So when we were talking and having a discussion before, and Nate brought up the Sith War, that kind of, and you had talked about making my character older. So I had this idea about what if he like perpetually has gone through this cycle where, he's initially brought on board or created to actually be this sparring bot, except for he's got this glitch that he refuses to be a good sparring partner. He always tries to win. He might even cheat to win. Whatever it takes. Like he won't spar down to the level of his opponent. So he gets decommissioned. And then lo and behold, someone else goes, "Oh, it's a sparring bot. This is perfect. I don't have to buy one."
Yeah.
And so he goes through this cycle of being activated and deactivated until we finally get to where we are now when the cycle gets broken.
Oh, wow.
For whatever reason.
Oh, and that's a great point. So actually, I need to dig in and determine exactly what event he comes from. So as far as Darth Plagueis, and so I'll look at that and propose to you and say, hey, I'd like him to actually come from this point, and then we can choose like certain points in his history. And I agree with you. I think essentially your sparring droid is probably the inner skull of that dude, and his body's been replaced 3 or 4 times. And so that's a great idea. I really like the idea. Also, I just wanted to throw this out there. So one of the most interesting characters in all of Star Wars, in my opinion, and I am an Episode 1, 2, and 3 fan. Hopefully, you guys can let me throw foul if you think this is a bad idea. But I really like Jocasta Nu. So Jocasta Nu was the Jedi librarian. So in episode 1, there was an old lady who was in the Jedi, who was on the Jedi Council. You never saw her swing a lightsaber, and she dealt with the younglings. And she was in the archives when Ben Kenobi, young Ben Kenobi, went to find the planet where they thought that there were missing Jedi. He dealt with this Jedi librarian named Jocasta Nu. And so I have ideas right out of the gate that Jocasta Nu, the Jedi librarian, very well may be seeking out your droid character for information, because you have seen both Jedi and Sith and sparred with both. And so from that perspective, you would really be kind of a historical artifact. And so I just kind of wanted to kind of go down that road and just kind of throw that idea out there. So if you guys get a chance, take a look at Jocasta Nu and just kind of get a feel for who she is, and let me know if you want to throw a flag on that idea.
Yeah, I'm completely open to anything, you know. So, because the only thing I have in my mind right now is this concept of this broken sparring droid that keeps, you know, coming up again. He's competitive to the point where it's a character flaw.
Yeah, that's a great point. One of the things that's really cool too is I was blessed. Me and my youngest daughter Tala, we watched through all of season 1 of Star Wars Rebels, and there was a droid in there named Chopper.
I love Chopper.
Yeah, he's the best. He's like like the most violent droid ever. Like, and he's just really aggressive. And so,
I was disagreeing with you guys, even though I wasn't on the camera yet. When you guys were talking about the splicers and hacking in Star Wars, I'm like, that's bullshit. R2 hacked everything. He was the man.
He was all over. It's true.
He hacked everything in every episode, you know, in every movie that he was in.
Yeah, and actually, one of the things that was really neat is, one of the things that's really fascinating is when he hacks, R2 has no wireless, right? So he always had to physically go and port in. Yeah, exactly. And from a story element, that's great. That's exciting, you know. And there was always a lot of excitement around, you know, R2 being right there at the port and the port spinning, and you know, so it's really kind of neat. I totally agree. So yeah, it's a really great. And I think one thing that's exciting too is we have a pretty diverse group. I'm really excited. I think there's a lot of story elements. One of the great things is I virtually have to write nothing. Like, the stories are kind of sprouting out of your characters are rich, verdant story soil, so which is great, which is really, really nice. And actually Nathan's is particularly interesting. I love this idea of a whole colony of Zabrak on the Outer Rim, you know, and him coming in. And one of the things I was thinking of too, Nathan, you might want to start thinking about this, is going down that diplomat road for specializations as well, because when you come back into the core, you might be coming back with requests from your people. So one, you could be saying, hey, we want to chart this land and we want to keep it for ourselves. You also might want to think about what's there now. Like, for instance, is there an indigenous colony now, but they're very small, and you could relocate them, you know, or something like that. So you might want to think about what your people need, Nathan. And so, you know, because I want to kind of tie stories to you as kind of a vanguard for them. You going back and requesting something for them or settling something for them.
Okay, yeah, I could think up some legitimate elements that they're going to be interested in me doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I could expect that any big galactic civilization, like the old Republic, you know, Galactic Empire, basically you need to say, like, yes, we own our planet technically, and you know, you might not have heard of us, but we have totally been living here for a really long time.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great idea.
And so I'm cool with taking I'm cool with branching out into different specializations to start. I was actually considering going stat and what is it called, skill heavy.
Okay.
Rather than the talent tree, but you know, I see there's a lot of cool things in the talent trees, especially the Force stuff.
I will say this. So I am blessed to have run actually 2 other campaigns, and and I do have one particular player who plays a droid slicer, and he is definitely the bane of my existence. His slice, he went really deep, right? And so he's super specialized, and he has super high attributes, and he very consistently finds information through slicing that would have taken an entire adventure. And so a lot of times there's a lot of story elements that get left on the cutting room floor because he cuts around and is able to find things out very quickly. So there are benefits to doubling down and going deep on the attributes. But I will say this: that player is a very patient player because the story elements do not revolve around him. The story elements have revolved around our Jedis, have revolved around our Mandalorian hired gun. And so while this player is really super capable, and when that player rolls, they get done what they want to get done, the story doesn't revolve around him. Now, that player,
I see.
yeah, and that player is very patient with that. Not even more than patient. Like it's weird. It's really interesting to me because the player is kind of like really happy just kind of watching what's happening with other characters and putting in his 2 cents. So so just a warning there. Yeah.
It's like he saves the day when it's needed.
Yeah, exactly.
Just,
it's
just
really
like R2.
Yeah, they're really interesting. So go ahead.
I don't think you choose a droid to be the star, though. It's not really that they're supporting cast. If you're playing a droid, it's because you want to be a droid. You have an idea.
Yeah, and actually,
that's one of the main characters, droids. R2's not. Someone's not. If we picked everybody playing a cast member of the series, R2 would probably be just someone's droid, not an actual main player. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now, one thing that's really interesting is you will be surprised how integral droids can become. One of the storylines in one of the campaigns I ran, there was a distinct arc, and basically what it was they came across this essentially like a convoy in space, and so it was about 10 or 20 different ships, and on these ships there were these beings who essentially they wore shrouds all the time. So they wore these rags and these shrouds in this Star Wars campaign. And these people lived together as people and droids. But the way they dressed, you could never tell who was who. And they did that on purpose so that no one would treat a droid like a droid and no one would treat a human like a human. They would treat each other as beings. Right? And so it was really interesting to see the way that the players interacted. But droids are really fascinating within the world, and you could do some things that are really quite amazing. One of the other things that's really amazing, when you go, the FFG Star Wars role-playing game really does some things that have never been done in role-playing games before. And one of them is you have, especially now that you have all 3 books out, you have this obligation, you have duty, and you have morale. And so one of the things is at the beginning of the game, you actually roll to see whose story is going to be triggered in that session, because you can't do all of them at once, right? And so I would roll, and whoever it comes closest to whatever their value is, we'd say, okay, tonight, Nathan, we're going to get into your duty, right? And so and then I would put forward a decision to you which would lower or raise that rating and might make a major change for your character. And so it's really kind of fascinating to see that element is there. But also there's another element which is at the very beginning you determine your destiny pool, and these are force points. So there's light side and dark side force points, and the droid contributes to that, but the droid cannot use those. They can't use light or dark side points, and so it's really fascinating to see how the players deal with that, being able to contribute force points but not use them. And it's really droids. The game is so deep, and there's so many different kind of angles that the characters come from. It's really amazing.
So, as I was talking about having issue with choosing my specializations, how you're saying, diplomat makes sense. I mean, I can see myself being kind of an explorer. I can see myself being kind of a colonist tech guy. There's a lot of different ways I feel like, aside from also having the Force Emergent. So
definitely,
I kind of am at a loss for picking basically my class. What's my actual career to start from?
Yeah, it really is interesting. The other thing is, and To me, it would be colonist. It makes the most sense. I'm gonna look at there's a full list though. It is tricky. Oh, I'm sorry. Explorers there as well. Both of those are good. The other thing is you could go. You're right. You're really jammed up because there are so many things you could do. There's colonist. There's explorer, commander, and diplomat. All of those are really integral. You could even go engineer. And the reason why is you could say, hey, I'm an engineer. I was supposed to there just be to fix the moisture evaporators, but I turned out to be a wise guy, and there were a wise person. People started listening to me. Those kind of things. The other thing that I'll just throw it out there, the Force and Destiny book is so good, and there's so many powerful options in it. You may actually want to think about the Force and Destiny book and say that your character was out there for all that long time and is a returning Jedi because he needed to be out there long enough to get past the time where he had to hide from the Empire itself. So you're right, Nathan. You really have a lot more thinking to do because there's so many different directions you could go. I did have a quick question for you guys. So I was really excited to hear that you knew who Chopper was, David. So I know you've seen some of the Rebels content. Nathan and Ted, at this point, you guys have or have not seen any of the Star Wars Rebels content?
I have not seen Rebels, but it is on my to watch list. So I don't imagine it will be too long before I pick it up and totally tear through it.
So and Nathan, I think you're probably where Ted's at, right?
I haven't seen it so hard I don't even know what you guys are talking about.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So let me talk a little bit about Star Wars Rebels because I actually would like to use the characters in our game, and I'll explain why. And also I'll put it out there to you Nerdarchy guys because Star Wars Rebels is kind of a dice roll. So Star Wars Rebels is they ended the Clone Wars. And Star Wars Rebels is a new series that has gone on for 2 seasons, and it is official canon, right? So that series is owned by Disney, and whether they choose to use those characters in Star Wars Episode 7, they are respecting that the things that have happened in that show are going to happen in the film, from everything that I've heard. And so that means that I can use essentially these characters. They're Spectre, so they're Spectre 1, Spectre 2. These characters in Star Wars Rebels, Sabine is a female Mandalorian, and Zeb is kind of like a hired gun type. Ezra Bridger is a Force Emergent character who's actually a Padawan. You have and then you have a pilot type, and you have a Jedi type. And these characters are really strong, and I'd love to use them in our game tangentially. They're not going to be right up in there, but I think there's a lot of depth in those characters, and I think I'm going to try to introduce them. As long as we don't hit Episode 7 and there's a full stop and they're like, oh, none of that was there, I have some ideas. Again, just kind of throwing things out there saying, hey, throw a flag if you think that's not a good idea to go down. And I'd love to hear from Nerdarchy fans as well what you guys think about if these cartoon characters are worthy of being put upside Kylo Ren and Finn and Rey and all the characters we've already seen from Episode 7.
I actually like Star Wars Rebels better than the Clone Wars.
I agree. I think it's very, very good. It's more balanced.
First lightsaber blaster.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lightsaber blast. What they do with lightsabers in there is crazy. There's a lightsaber blaster. It's a weak blaster. It's not super powerful, but it's definitely in there. It's a great idea. And in addition to that, the Inquisitor uses a double-bladed lightsaber that spins on a rotating axis, which is crazy. I mean, it's crazy.
And he throws it like the Zenith chakra.
Yeah, he's very, very deadly, and the show is really cool, and I definitely would like to bring some elements over. Sounds like we don't have any objections at this point, which is great, so that's good.
We're not in objecting a lot for the most part.
No, So to me, all this just means I have to go out and watch it that much sooner. Oh darn.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was watching them as they came out, so I know I'm behind. I'm hoping it's on Netflix.
No, actually, they are challenging to get. I had to get my copy from the library, and the reason they are challenging to get is because they are actually official canon. So they have not sold them to Netflix or Hulu or any free outlets. It's actually